Greetings sailors and welcome back to a replay, this time of the Venezia, which of course is the tier 10 Italian heavy cruiser. And it's one of those heavy cruisers that has 203mm guns. I think they're actually now outnumbered by the ones that have bigger caliber guns, but I could be wrong about that. I have a feeling that might be true, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's all lies and nonsense. Anyway, in terms of the tech trees, actually, it might not be true, but certainly when you include the premium ones in the super cruisers, yeah, there's a few that now have a bigger than 203mm as their caliber. So I can't really talk about the specifics of this ship too much, seeing as how, although I've had it now for like a month or two, I think, I really haven't played it very much. I mean, just generally, tier 10 is not my cup of tea at the best of times, and of course with the captain changes, it's been a bit of a harder thing to convince myself to take tier 10 ships into battle. But for whatever reason, on this particular day, I did decide I was going to try the Venezia. Yes, hello Sam, I know you're there. And, well, it turned out to be, well, as you'll see, a pretty decent game. Or at least I think it is. This isn't a ship that, and you'll notice this, you know, it's not a ship with a particularly fast reload. You do have 5 triple turrets, so you have a fairly considerable broadside. But with that long reload, you can't, like, you're not pumping out the damage over and over. This is very much more a standoff, do damage from a distance ship. And of course you've got the smokes to help you from time to time as well, but it's harder to get the effect of superintendent these days with smokes particularly. I will actually, I'll throw it up at the end after the score screens. I'll put on the captain skills I was using for this. I do recall I was using the heavy SAP/HE skill, so my SAP shells were doing a bit more damage, which it's obviously, you know, quite useful when that's your primary shell. And seeing as how I can't set fires apart from with my secondaries, I really wanted to try and get the most out of it that I could. I am at this point, as you can see, basically just falling back. I wasn't committing too hard to begin with. I sort of pressed north a bit and then swung round so I could kite away from whatever might be firing at me from across the cap. And it does look like they have a few more ships than us here, and certainly they've been a bit more aggressive. So rather than get bogged down, I'm basically keeping my distance and firing at the targets that I can fire at. I'm getting some okay salvos, I think, given my inexperience with these guns generally. The only downside with having popped a smoke here, which really was just out of an overabundance of caution, I didn't want to be caught broadside against that island while there was the potential of being shot by a battleship, because the armour on this is not bad, but you don't really want to get shot broadside, as with any cruiser. And so I didn't have then any spotting for at least a part of that spotter plane, so yeah, it somewhat wasted the opportunity that afforded me. But now I'm out of my smoke and I can spot this Minnesota again, I can actually get a bit more damage. And they're just kind of sat there, so yeah, they're a nice easy target for me right now. They've been kind of reversing forwards and reversing slowly backwards and then going forwards again. And yeah, it doesn't accelerate or decelerate or do anything particularly fast, that ship. So that's a nice target when you've got a lot of guns. Somebody is aiming at me though, and I thought it was the Minnesota, but it's turned out that it was the battleship getting some crossfire from the other side. So there we go, we can see the hit marker coming from over in that direction. So they could hit me without getting spotted themselves in return. I think that was, what, an Amagi or something? This was a tier 8 game, this was quite good matchmaking. But fortunately it didn't hurt me too much, and being a tier 10 cruiser, I do of course have some heals to use. For now I'm going to hang on to the adrenaline rush bonus though, It's not a very big one, but you know, I might as well have that extra little bit of rate of fire available. So as you can see, they've rather thoroughly dominated this side. The Richelieu doesn't seem like they woke up until, well, I don't even know, like a minute or two ago, and they're actually now reversing at this point. So we didn't even have as many ships on this side as it seemed we did, because the Richelieu was AFK for the good, first quarter or more of this battle. And so, yeah, we are definitely outmatched on this flank, and I really am just now playing with distance and trying to hit things that aren't taking too much attention to me, because we've done the same around the A cap. We have pushed them out, we have taken control there, but our team has also gotten maybe a bit bogged down there, I think, by particularly those two enemy destroyers. But of course, two of their destroyers are also on this flag. They've split themselves up pretty evenly in that regard. And I think we only had one destroyer on this side, and the other three are on, around the A cap. So that's kind of hindered us a bit. We really only had that Harugumo helping over here. And as you can see, and as I had guessed at this point, you can actually see I typed in the chat the effect that there was something going for the C cap, and lo and behold, so there is. Now, with most of the Italian cruisers, of course, you do not get any form of hydro or radar or anything like that. It's like 2 or 3 of the premiums. I think 2 of the premiums get hydro. None of them get radar, of course. I don't think any of them have a defensive. Or can you mount a defensive on like the Duca or something? I can't remember. But there isn't really any anti-DD weaponry, and it's one of the balancing factors of these because the SAP is quite effective against destroyers in particular, and so I'm thoroughly relying on them just blundering a bit too close to me. And one of the advantages I do have against destroyers is I'm quite a fast ship. This thing with the Sierra Mike flag will hit over 35 knots, which is nice. But of course, going against me is the fact I've got a slow reload, so I'm not going to be able to pummel a destroyer into submission in the same way I would if I was in a Des Moines or a Zao, or popping a reload booster in the Henri IV, or what even else is it, Tier 10? I don't know. Well, the Soviets don't fire that fast, but they have radar. There's the Minotaur and the Worcester, of course. You know, you get caught by them in the open, you are in for a seriously bad time as a destroyer. Smolensk too, of course. So, yeah, this ship really doesn't have that ability. You have to rely on enemy destroyers blundering a bit, or else rely on allied spotting, and I don't have either right now. Although those destroyers did get close enough to me for me to place their location at least, but I absolutely did not feel confident enough to push into the cap, especially not with those enemy ships poking out for the decap on that side. Our team is now pushing the north though, but we are 3 caps to 1 at the moment, and neither team has lost a particularly huge amount of ships. So this is a slightly tricky situation. I wasn't overall liking how this was developing, and a quick glance over at the side there shows our Harugumo is on extremely low health, so yeah, that's not so good. In fact, they just died to the Tallinn there, so that's one less destroyer for our side, and certainly nobody is close enough to give me a hand here, or those 2 battleships on the IJ line who are now kind of stuck there a bit. Additionally, now A is being flipped, so we know there's a destroyer there as well, but we do have a lot more teammates still quite close by, so if I can get over towards there, maybe I can help out with that a bit and hopefully get the Otago or one of the destroyers to take an interest. I've also got these battleships to continue firing at, but I really am feeling quite wary about getting shot at too much. Anyway, it turns out it's the enemy Harugumo who gets spotted as they're trying to smoke up, so I take a slight guess shot, and just the sheer amount of shells I was able to put out there, that got the kill, and I think that was actually my first kill, so that's a Sansonetti skill activating there, hot on the heels of the previous one, which was for I think 100 shell hits, And then turns out one of the sets of torps I put out gets lucky and kills the Benson, so that's another destroyer down. So that was very, very useful. That just leaves the Yugumo. And that is really the nature of the Italian cruiser torps. I've never gotten to use them that much offensively against, say, battleships or other cruisers. They're much more of a kind of fire and forget weapon because they have good range, but they don't really go very fast and you don't get a lot of them. Generally speaking, somebody has to be quite low health before it's worth trying to get up to them and finish them off with the torpedoes. It doesn't really go well with the rest of the play style of the Italian ships especially. Now I'm trying to break contact here and it's not working, so I can immediately tell the Yugumo is close enough to spot me while I'm in smoke, so I have to now hold fire and hope that I can make the turn now that I want to make without getting hit. So there we go, that works. And am I going to put more torps out? Yeah, okay, it's just a widespread there because I have no idea what side the Yugumo is on up until the point where these widespreads of Yugumo torps go past, and now I know exactly where they were and are likely to still be very close by to, because I think they were close enough to, they were just skirting their own detection and trying to shorten the amount of time their own torps took to reach me, because this is a big long ship and it doesn't necessarily turn that well, but it is fast, and I've managed to come out of my smoke, catch the Yugumo with their pants down, and hopefully I can now take them out, which I do. So that's 3 of the 4 enemy team's destroyers now dead, and as it turns out they were a reload booster Yugumo, so there was another set of torps and I just narrowly missed taking one there, but if I had taken one it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. I do still have a pretty decent amount of hit points at this stage. The enemy team's focus has largely been on what our team has been doing to the north though, so having taken their destroyers out from underneath them, I can now go and hopefully cap C, which would be a useful thing at this stage, but also just put some pressure on from this side. I can get some nice crossfire going on here while the enemy team is trying to deal with what's going on up north, because apart from their destroyers pushing around a bit, most of their team seems to have really just gotten bogged down in the D cap. They didn't really push around to C. They tried to turn around to defend what was happening going from A to the B cap, and our team has basically just been able to dictate things and the enemy team wasn't able to sufficiently react, so we do definitely have the upper hand in terms of positioning and I think to some extent hit points now as well, but they aren't that far behind in ships. And in fact I think we just lost whatever battleship that was left on the IJ line to whatever cruiser chased that down. There's also a Georgia somewhere unaccounted for as well. Apologies if my voice sounds a bit there today because my throat's being a bit weird. So yeah, if I'm speaking a bit, if I sound a bit like lower than usual or whatever, I don't know if I'm coming down with something or I don't know. It might just be a cold. It is that time of year. Would not be an uncommon occurrence. So trying to get the cap here, but also trying to get some more damage. And given that I'm sat on 4 kills, a 5th would be awfully nice. And this Amagi looks like a prime candidate. So there we go. I do in fact manage to kill secure them, although they're able to fire off their guns just before they die and actually get some damage, but it's not quite quick enough to get the reset. So we've got the cap now and we're ahead on points as well. And the last couple of ships are basically contained, so really we just need to not do anything stupid. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but in this case, well, if nothing else, our 3 destroyers are now able to basically be completely free of being spotted by anything. Their enemy destroyers are dead, and the radar cruiser they have left is still down somewhere to the southeast, presumably sailing back in this direction, but of course, you know, there's no way for them to be in radar range to do anything against our destroyers. You can just throw torpedoes in, although one of them is actually a bit close there. What's that, the Daring? So yeah, they are being very daring indeed, and actually there we go, it's trying to smoke up so they can fire at that Thunderer. I'm meanwhile exchanging fire with the Georgia, and that's when the Hindi decides to push out. Now, I think it would be fair to say that this seems like a bit of a desperation move at this stage. They are really quite thoroughly cornered, but between the Hindi and I think the Georgia, you know, I am taking some damage here, although I was angled well enough and I'm heading away as well to not be in any particularly serious danger. If the Georgia had been pushing hard here as well, this might have been a more effective move, but as it is, it's just that Hindenburg. They are going to be the cause of those two destroyers going down, though. I think they may well have had Hydro going, and so the Thunderer took the Kagero and the Hindi took the Daring. So that was a nice little pair of kills for them, but it's just really not enough to turn the tide here. I mean, I've been hammering away the Hindi, the Atago has been hammering away, and with the Thunderer going down to the Yukamo's guns, of all things, that just leaves the Talon and the Georgia left. And even if we'd lost more ships, even if I'd gone down, or the Atago, I don't think I was really in any danger of sinking there, but we still would have been in possession of 3 caps with enough time on the clock to, you know, keep racking up those victory points. So 173k damage, Kraken, Confederate and a Dev Strike, and the Confederate also got another Sansonetti thing to ping off, but doesn't really matter at that stage. First place on the team, 5 kills, 2500. The Thunderer did well, and the Atago did as well, actually 1800, third place on the team. The surviving Georgia on the enemy team, maybe not so much. One can possibly attribute that to the Deadeye effect, if you want to call it that. And just their team generally getting bottled up in that one cap absolutely proved to be their undoing. They weren't able to recover from the loss of their destroyers, who were pushing out unsupported at that stage, and of course, as you saw, I ended up killing 3/4 of them, so that was certainly nice for my score. So I think all things considered, given that this is like either only my first or second game versus other players in the Venezia, I mean, I certainly took it out to get the Snowflake once I unlocked it from the Brindisi. I might have even free XP'd it just to get that tier 10 Snowflake container. But yeah, that first game was definitely in co-op. And so, you know, it's not a ship I can claim much experience in, but apparently I kind of knew well enough what I was doing from the previous Italian cruisers to have some idea what to do here as well, and it all worked out rather nicely. It would have been nice to actually get the Hindi kill as well, get precisely half the enemy team under my belt, but I can't really begrudge the Atago getting that kill, because they clearly did a pretty decent amount as well. So yeah, a bit of a funny old game in some ways, but quite a pleasing result from my perspective. So hopefully you enjoyed this replay, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.